It's Base Phoenix here. Where we left off, we were still in the middle of Seismic's backstory. Um, so let's just jump into it. Let's just continue. Uh, where were we? Isaac just called John over the phone. Don't ask me how he remembered his number by memory. Um, but Isaiah called John from the phone in prison or jail. I forget which one I put him in. But they had an argument that they probably ain't coming back from. So let's go. John stood at a corner about to cross the street, still deep in thought about his childhood friend later in the day and how things, escalated for him and then for both of them during their conversation. He snapped to attention as a car barreled through a red light and smashed into a car that had the green light. The car that was hit flipped upside down and had gasoline leaking from it. Sparks flew from this flipped car, but they did not make contact with the gas yet. John rushed to flip the car and heard a voice calling from the inside. He saw a well-dressed, bleeding businessman. "Can you move?" John asked. "No, I'm stuck. My seatbelt is off, but I'm trapped," the man said. "Okay, hold still," John said before exhaling deeply. He grabbed the driver door and pulled. It popped off the car with ease. John dropped the door and looked at his hands briefly before reaching his arm out for the businessman. The man grabbed John's hand and John pulled the man out of the wreck as the man screamed. He successfully removed the man from the accident and got them a safe distance away from the accident. John turned around and began to hurry back to the other driver and his car, but both of the cars exploded before he had a chance to help. Sirens wailed as emergency vehicles approached the scene. The ambulance, police, and fire department. The businessman asked John for his name, and John told him before the businessman thanked him. "And what's your name?" John asked. "Harrison. Harrison Thane," Mr. Thane said. So John just saved Mr. Thane his mortal enemy's life. His mortal enemy's father's life. Isaac sat in a jail cell. A police officer walked up to the cell door and opened it. Isaac stood up, cautiously waiting for an attack from the officer. "What is this?" he asked the officer. "You're being released," the officer replied. "Why?" Isaac questioned. But this question wasn't answered until he walked into a waiting room with an older man dressed in white and a man around Isaac's age standing next to him, and two bodyguards standing behind them. "What the hell is this?" Isaac asked, still looking for answers. "How about a thank you, son?" The man in white said with a smirk. "Who are you?" "I'm a family friend of yours, Alfonso Durante. It's a pleasure to finally meet you," Boss Durante said, putting his hand out for a handshake. Isaac just looked at it. "Your father used to work for me. Before moving on to less safe options for work. I was actually under the impression that the mob hated black people," Isaac said. "Whoa, kid, no one said anything about the mob," Durante said, holding his hands up. "But if you must inquire, I am one of the few that loves the blacks. My second wife was one of you." Isaac frowned. "Black people." "Why are you here? Why did you get me out?" Isaac questioned. "We see you have nowhere else to go, so we're figuring you can work with us," Durante said. "And since I have my hand in the pockets of many downtown police, I figured you didn't need to stay in there." "You mean four," Isaac corrected. "And who's we?" "The Durante family." "Not interested." "Kid, you're making a mistake," Durante warned, but Isaac ignored him as he walked out past the four. Durante turned to his son. "Mateo, make sure you keep tabs on him." John was headed to get food when Vincent stormed up behind him. "John," Vincent shouted. Holy shit, you got my name right, John said as he turned around smiling, but his smile disappeared when he got a look at the monster before him. What the hell happened to your face? What was that? Huh. What the hell happened to your face? And your hair? Let's try this again, Vincent said as he ran up to John and punched him in the chest, knocking him down. People on the street began to crowd around them and film the fight. John stood up and looked at the crowd. People, listen, I don't think it's safe for you to be here, John said. Planet Star, someone from the crowd shouted. John sighed before reaching his hand out and hovered it over the ground. He caused the ground around Vincent to encase and trap him in the ground, pulling him below the surface and leaving just his head. The crowd roared. John walked up to the trapped Vincent. I don't want to fight you, Vincent, John said plainly. I've been fighting my whole life. Well, prepare to fight some more, Vincent said as he burst out of the ground and landed on the surface. He'd grown even taller and more muscular. The crowd began to back up from the two. Vincent reached out and grabbed John by his head. John shielded himself with a piece of the ground he commanded up. Vincent grew again and smashed John's shield, looking to grab John, but John was no longer there. Vincent turned around and saw John running back toward the campus. Vincent chased after him. John and Vincent had a famous fight that the whole world saw from the view of a helicopter camera, but the fight was nothing special as far as superpowered fights go. I just summed up the fight in that one sentence. I really didn't want... I tried to avoid explaining the fight, like, in detail as my other fight scenes go. I didn't think it was completely necessary here, because it's more about what happens after that affects John and Vincent and everybody else. There was a lot of back and forth between the two, mainly being John throwing rocks or shielding himself with them, and the gargantuan Vincent punching and breaking them. That's also why it was pretty repetitive. But the fight destroyed a good chunk of the college campus at the end. And at the end, all it took for John to take Vincent down was a hit to the back. Was to hit Vincent in the back with a rock. See, John multitasked in order to accomplish this, shielding the front as if he was waiting for Vincent to attack him. And Vincent took the bait, lowering his guard to strike John before the rocks nailed him in his back. Media referred to Vincent as the Gargantuan Man, and John as Seismic. But the world would never hear any more from Gargantuan Man because of what John did to him with the rocks. When they struck Vincent's back, they hit and broke his spine, instantly paralyzing him. This did stop the fight, but it left Harvard's campus a mess. The president of the school was forced to kick John out due to the damage and the fact that this was all over a fight. The school kept Vincent, though, because of how deeply interconnected Mr. Thane was with the school. Vincent's life went on at the school, but it wasn't the same since his legs no longer worked. His friends treated him differently. He found it difficult to focus in class, and he wasn't as good with girls as he used to be because they all felt sorry for him. John's life seemingly stopped because he went home with no backup plan in mind. He didn't even tell his parents or go home right away. He went straight to his junkyard in Haven when the bus dropped him off. He toyed with the metal in the junkyard, tossing it around in anger before a familiar archangel showed up to talk to him. Apotheal stepped through a portal, surprising John initially. But what came as even more of a shock for him is the 6 people that followed Apotheal out of the portal. They all introduced themselves. Leia, Josh, Mila, Ash, and the 2 yet to be known, the 2 I have not written backstories for at this point in the story, or we haven't gotten to the backstories yet, Adam and Chris. You're the superhero that lifted the crane, John said to Leia. And you're the one that was kicked out of college, Leia retorted, as if John was insulting her. John frowned and she thought about what she said. Sorry. You all have been chosen by beings you are not familiar with, archangels. They have chosen you to be their avatars on Earth, to be protectors. You are to use your powers for good and protect the Earth from threats, Apotheal announced. Why now? What's coming? Mila asked. more threats since the first invasion and what is occurring in the heaven dimension right now. So this is a huge exposition note right now. So we find out why these 7 didn't get the serum, but they have superpowers. They were chosen by archangels to protect the earth from these coming threats that are going to keep coming. And now we also learn that heaven in this universe is a dimension. It's not up or down. There is the heaven is, it exists as an afterlife place and everything, but it has like multiple levels, kind of like the 7 circles of hell, kind of like that, but the opposite. So heaven is a dimension, hell is also a dimension in this universe, and limbo, you'll learn, is also a dimension. Since the first invasion was occurring, more threats. Since the first invasion and what is occurring in the heaven dimension right now, the Creator figured you humans needed more protection, Apathiel explained. Humans are one of the weakest species in the universe. That's comforting, John commented. You all need to stay together as a team. Learn to deal with one another, Apathiel said. Leia, Josh, and Mila have already begun to build a base for you all to live. And we're just supposed to go along with this? Adam asked. The Creator wills it. Why doesn't he just tell us himself? Chris asked. It is busy, Apathiel said. When is it not? Ash said, or asked. Your instructions have been made clear. Apathiel. Wait, why did I phrase it as a question? Your instructions have been made clear? Apathiel asked the group. There was no real response for them. Josh just shrugged. I guess. Then I will make my exit. If you are in need, summon me by calling for my name, Apathiel said before disappearing into a portal. So, you guys want to get food or something? Josh asked. I'm starving. About a week went by, and Josh was walking home from a temporary day job as he was working. He was looking at a picture of the Ark base being built by all of them on his phone. He looked up from his phone to see a familiar face standing in the empty street. I? John, Isaac said. I thought you were in jail, John said. You never bothered to see what happened after the phone call, did you? Isaac asked as he stepped into the light casted from a street lamp. John noticed his size difference. You been working out, bro? You been working out, bro? He was still referring to his nickname of a nickname. John asked, calling him the even shorter nickname he's been calling him since they were children. Something like that, Isaac said menacingly. Who got you out? What have you been up to? John asked. A man by the name of Alfonso Durante. I've been working for him, Isaac said, slowly approaching John. Pays well, and they treat me like family. That's good, John said, putting his phone away and preparing for an attack. Not to be rude, but what do you want? To kick your ass, John, Isaac said. That's all. Well, good luck with that, John said before tossing a rock at him. But Isaac punched through it. Deja vu. The beginning half of their fight ended up being very similar to John's fight with Vincent. John could have hit Isaac in the back a few times, ending the fight, but he didn't want to run the risk of paralyzing his friend. I'm growing tired of this repetitive bullshit, John, Isaac said, breathing heavily. Oh, I think we both have super strength, John said. Let's use nothing but that. No tricks or anything. I swear on our friendship, or what it used to be. Fine, Isaac said. John dropped the rocks that he was hovering and put his fists up. Fair warning, though, I've been boxing a lot recently, training to become bodyguard for the Durantes. This is what Isaac said. The two friends squared up and traded both blow for blow. I don't know why, but when I tend to when I tend to write fist fights, it normally just ends up being like kind of like boxing, kickboxing, kind of like that. But it's normally when I write fist fights, it's the characters I'm using normally know that type that style of fighting. It's normally explaining like their backstories and stuff like that. John's been fighting his whole life, so he kind of knows how to box. And Isaac, has been training with the Durantes like he just explained. Lux also knew from his military training from his father's military training taught his mother taught him, and so on and so forth. The two friends squared up and traded blow for blow. They shared punches to the jaw, ribs, chest, each making a crunching sound. They were each able to withstand each other's punches, but John's super strength was able to get the better of Isaac, since John's super strength was stronger, if that makes any sense. John connected another punch to Isaac's jaw, causing him to fall to his knees. John grabbed Isaac by the collar of his shirt, staring into the bloody face of his friend. Isaac said nothing as John raised a fist to finish him, but decided against it and let Isaac fall to the ground unconscious. John pulled out his phone and called an ambulance for his ex-best friend before leaving the scene. Weeks later, as John walked through the suburbs of Midtown Haven after checking on the progress of the base, heard an explosion come from a block away where he stood. He sped towards it, and on the way caught up with Ash and Adam as they reached Chris's house. They stared at the house with a hole blown in its roof as Leia, Josh, and Mila also arrived on the scene. So we're inching, as we get through all 7 of their backstories, I think that's number 5, we're inching closer and closer to what the heck happened at the house at this place that, was a house, you just learned, why there was an explosion. And now we are on chapter 15, page 234. Let's go. There was a knock at the door. Miss Crawford grabs a robe and unwraps it around her nightclothes. She walks downstairs and walks to her door looking through the peephole. Miss Crawford is the landlady that needed rent. I just realized I was moving the phone. I'm so sorry. Needed rent from Jackie and Jay. She's the landlady, so she's like in the family house next door, like in the same building. It's a 2-family complex house thing. Who are you? Do you have any idea what time it is? She asked. Samurai peers back through the peephole, although he can't see anything. Oh, come on, Miss Crawford, let me in. How do you know my name? I don't know you. Samurai backs up from the peephole and leans a hand on the door. Wow, you don't recognize someone you called the cops on? You're one of those people, huh? I call the cops whenever I see trouble. You must be a troublemaker. Samurai hears footsteps that are leading away from the door. You think I'm a troublemaker, Miss Crawford? Silence. Miss Crawford. More silence. You're not calling the cops now, are you? No answer. Samurai extends a fingernail and jiggles it around in the door handle. There's a click, and he does the same to the lock above it. Then the same to the lock above that. He retracts his fingernail. He kicks the door open and it swings on its hinges and slams against the wall. Yes, he's in the house now, Miss Crawford shouts from the kitchen. Samurai creeps in and stands in the archway to the kitchen. Miss Crawford briefly turns around and opens a drawer. She spins back around wielding a sharp butcher knife, aiming it at Samurai. Samurai smiles confidently and lets Mrs. Crawford sink the knife into his stomach. Ooh, Miss Crawford, take me out to dinner first, Samurai says, mocking her. He removes the knife himself, drops it on the floor, and a stab wound immediately heals. Miss Crawford looks at Samurai in horror. Are you confused? Or was it in the sentence he said? He's a little weird. Yeah, he's a little weird. Miss Crawford looks at Samurai in horror. What are you? Revenge personified. For all those troublemakers you called the cops on. You broke into her house. Did I? Or is that just what your twisted vision saw? Samurai asked as he extends all 10 fingernails and stabs Miss Crawford through the stomach. He feels her body violently shake as the life drains from it, then ceases. He stands for a minute, taking in her death, then he grins, and her body drops her body and walks across the floor, attempting to shut the door behind him. Instead, it swings and creaks, at first showing the body to the world, then hiding it. How do you deal with all the screams you hear around the world? Typhus asks Ardentia. They're both in the training room, with the room simulating a grassy plain instead of a rocky wasteland this time. I tend to them. Densha answers as she dodges a bolt of lightning that comes from his fingertips. What else am I supposed to do? Don't you sleep? He asks. She flies at him and goes for a punch. He catches it, but slides across the grass. His pupil and irises disappear as he tries to shock her, bluish white lightning surging from him. She's unaffected and charges a blast of her laser vision, her eyes turning from their normal red to bright red. Before she releases it point blank, she sweeps her foot and flips her over him. It should be him over her. But before she. Wait. He sweeps her foot and flips her over him. Oh, he was sweeping, my bad. Before she hits the grass, she levitates and corrects herself. No, she says plainly. When you're all sleeping, is when I do my patrolling around the world. Is it being able to survive on lack of sleep one of your superpowers? Typhus asks as he clasps his hands together and then separates them, lightning forming from his fingertips at first. A ball of lightning then forms in between his hands, so he goes like that. He holds his palm towards the ceiling, and the ball floats in his hand, and strikes come from all over the room. Ardentia successfully dodges the strikes before flying at him. She stopped in shock as she didn't realize that a lightning trap had been laid out from when Typhus first formed the ball. The ripple of electricity in the grass stops her in her tracks as Typhus calmly walks up to her and pokes her on her forehead, giving a lot more charge to the lightning than when he released it from his body. This time, she flies across the training room and her back slams into the wall. Typhus looks at her with triumph, but her body does not fall to the ground. Here's Daddy. Hey, Dad. Thanks for joining the stream today. Instead, she pushes herself off the wall and floats in place, her eyes charging once more. His look of triumph disappears as she frowns at him. Use a mattress to floss. It's pretty good. Where was I? Then she flies at him. Wait. Nope. Slams against the wall. Instead, she pushes herself off the wall and floats in place, her eyes charging once more. His look of triumph disappears as she frowns at him. No, it's not. Ardentia finally answers. At least, I don't think it is. Then she flies at him. Typhus was already in the process of shooting a wave of lightning from his body at her. She dodges all of it midair and stops above Typhus's head, raising a hammer fist. Typhus holds out his hands above his head, with a net of lightning forging from them. She swings down at him, but instantly stops right before his hands, a shockwave coming from her, from just her motion. The force from the shockwave knocks Typhus on his back. Then he goes to get up, but Ardentia stares him down with her eyes glowing bright red once more. He taps the grass 3 times in response. Her eyes turn back to the normal crimson red. So he just tapped out. He smiles and flips her off before reaching out his hand. She floats down to the grass and grabs his hand, easily pulling him up. Well, there's no way you can save everyone, Typhus says. What do you do about the people you can't save? I try to reassure myself that it isn't my fault, Ardentia says after a brief pause. And does that work? Most of the time? No. So now we're going to another origin. We're going into Typhus's backstory. This will be 6 out of the 7 heroes. So here we go. Young Adam bounced as he walked on his way home from middle school. He had silver hair, green eyes, and fair skin. His soccer uniform was in the process of getting soaked from the thunderstorm, but he loved the rain, stepping in as many puddles as he could, drenching his clothes. He found a deep puddle, scurried over to it, and kicked the dirty water. He did, getting the top part of his sneakers wet and moistening some of the sock, but it didn't bother him. As he continued to walk, he noticed his hair acting funny, beginning to stand up on end. He got a tingly feeling in the back of his neck, but he was trying to focus on keeping his hair and keeping it down. It shouldn't have been standing up at all because of how wet it was, but it did anyway. And before he could do anything further, a white hot flash shot down from the sky and the lightning struck Adam on top of his head. He screamed, a delayed reaction after the strike, but he didn't feel pain or burning or anything bad. As a matter of fact, he felt better than before, energized. He patted himself all over to make sure he was okay. When he patted himself down, he noticed something different with his hands and arms. Lightning coursed through them as if he was supercharged. Whoa, he said to himself. At the sight of this, he sprinted straight home and entered his house, dripping wet as his mother set the table. Adam, dinner's ready. I already ate, Miss Griffin said. Adam set his dripping backpack down by the door, kicked his cleats off, and walked to the kitchen table, still checking out his arms and legs. He pulled out a chair and climbed onto it, taking his seat. His mother washed the dishes. How was practice? His mother asked. It was, Adam began to say. He picked up his fork and saw an electrical surge course between his hand and the tines of the fork. Cool. I'm gonna have to ask you to elaborate, dearie, Miss Griffin said. Hold on, Adam said before he jumped out of his chair and sprinted upstairs to his room. On his way to his room, he saw his older brother, Brandon, a junior in high school, tall, brown hair, green eyes, fair skin, slightly Irish accent, headed downstairs. Adam didn't have an accent because he was born in the States when his parents moved. Brandon was 8 before leaving Dublin with his parents. Their father was a factory worker that saved up enough money with their mother to move to the States, to downtown Haven. He was injured in a factory accident that left him without an arm. Turned to alcohol for healing, but he was an angry drunk. One night when he was attacking his wife, Brandon called the cops on him and he was arrested for domestic violence. He was later killed in prison over gang rivalry. But now, the Griffins still survived off the disability checks from the government. Miss Griffin did her best to raise the boys right. Hey, punk, where you going? Brandon questioned as Adam passed him in the hall. Adam ignored him and burst the door open to his own room. Brandon looked back at his little brother instead of heading downstairs to eat and walked into Adam's room. Adam was typing and searching things on the computer, looking up things about electricity and lightning as Brandon watched him from the doorway, with his hands shoved into his pockets. He thought it'd be a good idea to scare his little brother, considering Adam wasn't paying attention to anything else but the computer. He snuck behind Adam and grabbed his shoulder, scaring the kid. Boo, Brandon shouted, but when he placed his hands on Adam's shoulders, he felt an electric shock come from him, causing Brandon to jump back in pain and literal shock. This surge of lightning also caused Adam to fry his computer, immediately shutting it off. Adam didn't really react to the initial scare Brandon tried to cause, but he did react more to his computer turning off. Crap, Adam exclaimed. It wasn't done. I wasn't done. What the heck happened? What do you mean, what happened? What did you do? Brandon asked, brushing the hair down on his body all over. What do you mean, what did I do? Adam asked, turning around in his desk chair. You shocked the hell out of me. How did I shock you? You're the one who scared me. What? No, I meant literally. You've got a new prank gag I don't know about or something? Brandon asked his sibling. No, Adam stopped mid-sentence, realizing what happened. He turned back to the computer. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Believe what? Adam stood up and turned to face his brother. He was able to summon lightning at his fingertips, showing his older brother his new abilities. Brandon's eyes went wide. Holy shit, he said. Right? You can't tell Mom, Brandon said. Excuse me. Why? We don't know what she'd do. Turn you over to the government for money, take us to go on the run. Love me unconditionally, Adam added. Brandon grabbed Adam's shoulders to try to talk to his brother seriously, but Adam accidentally shocked him again, causing Brandon to let go and just speak straight. Look, we don't know if this world is ready for anyone with powers, I guess, Brandon said, looking at Adam's changed hair. Instead of drooping down from the rain and normally just the style he kept it in, his hair was spiked up. I'll try my best to keep you safe with your secret. You can tell no one. Adam stared at the ground, thinking about his brother's decision, and decided his older brother knew best. But what he didn't know was that Brandon was a junkie. He was distraught from the decision he made to call the cops on their father. Yes, he was abusive toward their mother, but he was still their father. And Brandon felt that it was his own fault, Brandon's own fault, for getting their father killed. Not even a month later, while he was still grieving, he was introduced to weed. When he smoked it, for him, it got rid of his inhibitions and he was willing to try anything. This led to a whole assortment of other drugs that he kept trying. His body was slowly affected over time, and both their mother and Adam noticed, but it was too late by then. By then, he had already announced to them he was moving out, going to live with a friend. He promised his mother to keep going to school, but he skipped day after day until he no longer attended. But up until that point, Brandon and Adam were able to successfully keep Adam's secret from others, having a few close calls here and there. However, Brandon, always thinking on his feet, was able to cover for his younger brother. When the first invasion came, the one that Noble stopped, Adam decided it was best to stay out of the fight, still following his brother's guidance. However, he stopped following Brandon's guidance once he met the Arcs at the age of 19, which was convenient timing for him, considering he didn't know what he wanted to do besides not go to college once he graduated high school. So there's a theme among some of these young heroes, Lux and now Adam Typhus. Didn't know what they wanted to do with their lives once they graduated high school, besides not go to college. It was convenient timing, like I said, for them all. A few days after meeting with all the Arcs in the abandoned junkyard Seismic likes to visit, Adam was in Midtown looking for a job to keep him stable until the Arc base was built. He was taking a stroll through the suburban area looking at the two family houses, thinking that he might possibly rent one side if he didn't like living with the Arcs. He didn't really know them, and they didn't really know him. So what would be the point of getting attached? If what the Archangel said was true, then all they would need to do was fight together. Fighting came sooner than he thought, though, as an explosion 2 blocks away from him alerted him to the house in the distance. And that is origin number 6. I think the last origin in the entire book is it might be Chris's origin. And at this point, I'm kind of hoping it is, because I'm just doing this origin thing to introduce these characters that nobody knows right now. But as the story continues along, you get to know who the characters are. The origins will be less frequent. Sentry walks with Eidolon, with Eidolon's arm around her. Now, this isn't an origin, this is the present now. They're both smiling after having a good date night until Ake steps out of an alleyway in front of them. A white smile spread across his face. They both stop and Eidolon raises an eyebrow. Dude, do you know who we are? He asks. I don't think you want to mess with us. Ake smiles, even wider somehow, and cocks his head at Sentry. Eidolon steps in front of her. Go home, man. You don't want this fight. But I do, friend. You're a friend of Jay's, right? Eidolon's fist, what about my kid? Which one? We brainstormed like 3 of them. I don't think I'm not going to put them in the first book. There's already a whole lot of people in the first book. But, I forget their names. Spigot, was that one of them? The water dude? I think that was one of them. Eidolon twists his face to one of confusion, concern, and anger. Ake takes out a combat knife and lunges at Eidolon. Eidolon, in response, touches Sentry and causes them both to phase. Ake falls to the concrete on the other side of them. They turn around and face him. He stands. Okay, the second book. Listen. I don't know what I'm going to do with them. Maybe I'll put them in a different series or something. He stands and they turn around and face him. He stands and slashes at Eidolon again. Then, before he continues this flurry, Eidolon pushes Sentry out of the way and begins to dodge the attacks instead of phasing. What are you doing? Sentry asks. Relax, I got this, Eidolon says. No, I got this, Ake says to Sentry, After a few more pointless slashes, Eidolon phases his entire body and places a fist in the center of Ake's chest. Ake stops his attempts to slice at Eidolon and stands straight up. Yeah, if I make my hand solid, it's the afterlife for you, pal, Eidolon says. Ake smiles. I'm guessing you can't hold it forever, though. So I'm guessing you'd have to remove your hand at some point. You couldn't kill me if you were a real hero. Oh, and I found out, side note, I read somewhere a while ago that DC and Marvel had like a shared copyright on the word superhero, but I just looked it up like 2 days ago and apparently they don't. So I'm probably going to change a lot of the times I use hero in this book to superhero because they are all superheroes. So, what was that? You couldn't kill me if you were a real hero. You're way too goody-goody. Jay, though, he says, holding his jaw. He knows how to show a man a good time. What are you waiting for? Just knock him out or something, Sentry shouts from the sidelines. This irritates Eidolon, causing him to divert his focus to her, only leaving his fist in Ake's chest still phased. Shut up! I said I'm handling it. Ake steps out of the way of the fist, and in one swift motion pulls out a copy of the serum and pokes Eidolon in the neck with it. Eidolon's eyes go wide as he stumbles back and pulls out the syringe, and he holds his neck. Ake stands back and smiles. Eidolon's phasing flashes in and out different parts of his body. Ake looks over at Sentry and nods as if he's tipping a cowboy hat or fedora, and walks off. She's looking at her boyfriend in shock. Babe, I can't control it. She runs up to him and tries to hold him. Stay back. He puts a hand out and backs up. This is the hand that turns solid, and Eidolon stands frozen at the sight of his hand forming a hole in his girlfriend's chest. She looks at him, and as his hand phases out again, she collapses to the ground, her eyes rolling up as she does. No. He drops to his knees and tries to pick her up, but looks at his hands and sees them still phasing in and out. He looks at around at the neighboring buildings. Somebody call an ambulance. He yells that, but I'm not yelling. He places his hands on the ground and hunches his body over hers, crying. Then a break. What do you mean you don't know who it was? Asai asked. She's standing near the doorway of the cafeteria in the Alpha Corps headquarters, her back against the white wall, arms folded. The cafeteria smells of strong bleach as the janitor has just left before Asai and Celeste entered. Celeste came for a midnight snack, though she did not need to eat. She enjoyed the taste of earthly food and rummages through a glass fridge in the dining area. The rest of the cafeteria matched the white walls, white tiled floor, white cement ceiling, white wooden tables, and white benches attached to those tables. Celeste turns around from the fridge with a donut in one hand and a banana in the other, and an apple in her teeth. She places the unpeeled banana on a table near her and takes a bite out of the apple before speaking. I mean just that, Asai, she says. I didn't recognize it. Well, would anyone else on the council know? Asai asked, becoming frustrated with the Guardian. Celeste takes another bite and speaks with the crisp apple flesh in her mouth. Considering the nature of the being, meaning that he was likely evil, it's possible Dom, Astral, or Inara knows, Celeste states. But it's possible that Cosmos knows. Well, can you reach out to him then? Asai persists. Celeste nods. I can, she says. But how about we just enjoy the fact that everyone's okay? Everyone is not okay. Yeah, of course those guards aren't, but I mean the kids, Celeste says. The guards had lives, you know, Asai says. I'm surprised you're not bawling your eyes out, being the mother of nature and life and all that. Oh, I'm well aware, Itsumi, Celeste says, calling her by her first name, something very few could do. I'm not sure you are. You don't seem to be too torn up about it. I have my ways of dealing with grief and failure. Those ways healthy? Sai glares at Celeste before choosing not to answer and walking through the cafeteria doors back to her office. Celeste takes another bite of her apple and shrugs. So, she was talking about a council and 4 name drops: Dom, Astral, Anara, and Cosmos. So, like I said, I think somebody asked yesterday that, um, or was it John? It was when John was here, my friend John. He was asking whether she, like, somebody was like gods or something like that. And I said, she's a bigger than a god, these people. Um, so those are some of the people that Mother Nature herself associates with. And we will find out who all of those people are. I don't think it's during this book. I think you get maybe 1 or 2. I know definitely 1, maybe a second one later in this book. But everything is explained, completely explained in the 3rd book. So everything as far as like gods and aliens and monsters and demons and stuff go. The subway is one of many ways the citizens of Haven City get around. They're normally on time and reliable. There are a handful of stations, however, that that were in the process of construction but ceased due to funding being pulled for other city projects, mainly for Uptown Haven. The trains did not roll through these stations as the tracks were already built, but they didn't make stops at these abandoned stations. These abandoned stations became homes for homeless citizens and people who wanted to stay under the radar, away from the public eye. This particular station that normally housed both homeless and the men that worked under This particular station that normally housed both the homeless and the men that worked under a man named Skeeter has been a dark glossy red that's painted. If one were to step into the dimly lit station, the first and only smell that would come into contact with one's nose would be a metallic smell: blood. All along the walls, floors, ceilings, and tracks, the bodies that the blood belonged to have been piled into a poorly lit corner of the station. So this just happened. That's not what I meant by painted. I meant painted with blood. That was corny. The bodies that in the poorly lit corner of the station. A light shone down on the pile, occasionally flickering and bringing light to a dark picture. Some of those people were innocent, a man shouts, his voice trembling at the sight of a bloodthirsty killer towering over him. You didn't have to kill him. Oh, but I did, the killer says. Up until this point, the man known as Skeeter had not seen the killer's face clearly. But as Skeeter crawled back and away from the murdering psychopath, a light flickered above him and gave light to a dark person. Ake, the man responsible for putting Lux's mother in the hospital and now Sentry. Hector, why are you doing this, brother? Skeeter asked, hoping to try and appeal to Ake's humanity. Little did he know Ake has none. You don't have to do this. You know, something told me not to trust a man with scumbag in his name. Scumbag Skeeter, Ake says, flashing his pearly teeth. He fiddles with his combat knife in his left hand, flipping it repeatedly, catching it by the tip of the blade each time. Scumbag Skeeter's back connects with a white tiled wall. His heart rate increases, and he's having trouble keeping track of his breathing. Skeeter's heart skips a beat as Ake stamps his right foot next to Skeeter's head on the wall. Your serum didn't kill as promised, though it did cause the friend's power to go haywire. The idiot injured his girlfriend. Lucky me. So why are you unhappy, brother? Stop calling me that, Ake says, catching his knife by the handle this time and raising it to Skeeter's eye. I'm half Cuban, you white country boy. Skeeter takes a huge gulp. Sweat drips from his nose as he breathes loudly from his mouth. And to answer your question, your serum did not work as I said, Ake continues. The friend would have been dead if it worked as intended. I managed to get the friend just once with a shot, but your shitty serum didn't work, scumbag. Why do you keep calling him the friend? Shouldn't you at least know the names of the folks you're going after? Skeeter asked, trying to buy himself some time, though no one was coming to rescue him. My main focus is fucking with Jay, Ake states. Ever since that unfortunate day that I mugged his mother, our destinies have been intertwined. Maybe even before that. I already knew him from his fighting reputation, and there's no way he didn't know of me. I'm called the local psychopath. He had to have known about me, right? R- right. Shut up, Ake shouts before stabbing Skeeter in his right shoulder. Skeeter shouts in pain as he reaches for his wound, but Ake removes the knife, then stabs it through Skeeter's left hand and his shoulder again. He twists the knife, then pulls it out, letting blood pour into his pants. Skeeter shouts in pain again. Ake's eyes constrict to where one can no longer tell the color of them. You want to know the secret to my powers, Skeeter, the scumbag. Every time I injure or harm someone, every fiber of my being strengthens exponentially. The entire fucking Haven City police force could show up right now, and you'd still be fucked. So would they. Skeeter begins to cry, salty tears mixing with the oil and sweat coming from his pale face. Ake leans in closer to Skeeter, so close, in fact, that it's like Ake is stealing Skeeter's oxygen from him. Now, before I end your suffering, that I'm actually quite enjoying, do you have any last words or regrets that you'd like to tell your audience of one before croaking? Ake questions. Skeeter exhales a shaky breath before speaking. I just want to say, Ake stabs Skeeter through his eye so deep that it penetrates the wall behind his head, making a sharp tink sound. And we're out of time. Sorry, brother, Ake says in a mocking tone. He steps on Skeeter's forehead, then pulls the knife free before wiping it off on his pants. Now I need to know another way I can get to Lux. I'd love to take advantage of this enormous power boost while I have it. Just then, a train blows by behind him, rattling the tracks, the clanking sound of echoing through the once again abandoned station, as Ake looks at the cars and smiles wickedly. The Arc Base Garage. Okay, this is the last backstory, I think, coming up. Yeah, I know this point. Let's see how far we can get. Okay, the Arc Base Garage is known as Josh's litter box by Typhus, as IceCap has several devices and vehicles that he has modified. He's unsure whether or not the litter box is insensitive because it's a cat, but he tries not to think about it, though he's almost sure it is. The only person normally allowed down there without IceCap's company is Sina. Together, they normally talk while she helps him assemble his toys. With her very useful telekinesis. Tonight is a special night as he has allowed Vital to join them, since he simply asked to see what Josh is working on. They stand in the elevator, Vital awkwardly in between IceCap and Sina, staring straight forward as the other two eye each other. The elevator doors open and IceCap takes the lead, with Sina tight on him and Vital behind her. The cave is the same size as the entire upstairs of the base, and almost looks bigger because it's emptier. The rocks glisten and shimmer blue from the water rolling down the sides of them. The water runs off and forms a pool at the bottom of the walkway leading to the Haven River, giving the cave a salty smell. The main metal walkway clinks louder than the running water under their feet as they make their way past IceCap's blue toolbox. The walkway branches into 7 separate metal paths, each being a home for a separate invention. So in case you want to know what I've been working on, which is why I assume you're down here, I'm just working on a hovercraft that'll be pretty much useless considering we can all get around ourselves faster, IceCap says. He points at a few other inventions sitting on circular metal paths that branch off the main walkway. Jetpack over here, I think you'll get use of, Chris. Normal car with modifications. Again, not likely any of us need to drive. That's where the AI stems from. A boat. Oh, that's where the AI stems from. A boat. I've been working on other things. What's the point of all this, Josh? Vital questions. IceCap kneels down and pokes at the car that is being modified. He gives his friend a condescending look. Well, Mr. can't get himself anywhere like the rest of the team can. These are possibly to help you, IceCap answers, and to keep my brain active. Think you're better than us, Josh? Vital asks. Well, yeah. Vital looks at Sina. She closes her eyes and nods slightly to the left. Definitely smarter, Icecap adds. Vital takes a second look around at the inventions. Why don't you sell any of this? He asks his friend. I've already asked him, Sina tells him. It's because he's not inventing for the money, but for, well, you heard him. How many times do we have to repeat ourselves, Chris? You're not big-brained enough to be down here, Icecap says, before turning to Sina. This is why, Mila, this is why no one is allowed down here. You ever mess with the water, considering, Vital begins. I actually never thought of that, Icecap says. Maybe there's a brain up there after all. All Icecap does is merely look at the blue toolbox they walk past, and Sina places 2 fingers on her temple and holds her brown glove out. Telekinetically, bring it over to the car they're standing at. Icecap grabs a wrench, and Sina lifts the car. Icecap grabs a wrench, and Sina lifts the car. Icecap points at the 4 corners under the car, each time a sliver of ice shooting out of his fingertips. The ice grows into 4 ice pillars that are just high enough for him to roll under the car with the skateboard that lies at his side. Well, since you're down here, would you like to ask any super personal questions that even folks upstairs might not know about me? Icecap asks Vital. How do you deal with, your condition? Vital asks in response. Icecap slides from underneath the car and looks up at the one clothed in a green gi. It's not really personal, dude, the tiger says, but it wasn't as hard as you think. People love me. It's not like celebrity love. It's like disability love. They feel bad for me. And that and he makes people laugh, Sina adds. That too. Any reason for that? The comedy act, Vital asks. You assume it's an act? Icecap questions. I know your backstory. You mean my origin. Heroes have origins. Same shit. Listen, who told you about my origin? Vital looks at Sina. She looks away after a brief second of eye contact with him. Vital looks back at Icecap, who is now back under the car. Not important. Vital continues. What is that you're all right. I'm just saying I can't imagine it being easy with the cards you were dealt. Well, it is, Icecap says, pulling out from under the car again. Is this about saving your ass when... No, it's not. 'Cause I get the feeling you're gonna do this to everyone, Icecap says. No, I'm just trying to connect. Ever since... Well, what's your origin, Chris? Do you have one? No, not really. Nothing like that. And guess what? It goes into an origin. But his origin is not short, and there's another important character added in his origin. So, but it's already 8:52. We've been going for around 50 minutes. Yeah, this is a long origin. We've been going for around 50 minutes. Oh, and also at the end of his origin, we learn that we finally learned what happened at the house, what the explosion was at the end of everybody's origin. So that'll be fun to read tomorrow night. But here's a short announcement. At the end of each stream, I'm going to be giving shout-outs to everybody that followed me from the previous stream. So from the previous stream, we had one new follower. Shout out to Imperium42. I was talking to him in the chat last stream, and I didn't realize until after I streamed that he followed me. So shout out to you, Imperium. Thank you for the follow. And we will end the stream and continue next time with Vital's backstory. Thank you, everybody that showed up, and thank you for watching. And I will see you all tomorrow at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Good night.